Hello, how's everybody doing? Turn Kahana Steloro on. Did you see that, Rob? So, yeah, as you can see here, straight away, we've got Big Rob on. Meet the Tuber.
Hello,
Hi, Rob. How you doing?
hello. I'm all
Champion
right. I'm good,
Sunday
mate.
Rob, as is now currently known, formerly known as Tino 777. And it only seems like yesterday that I was talking to Rob because it was really a couple of days that we were on Dana's stream.
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah. And Rob very diligently reminded me that he'd not been on Meet the Tuber. So
That's
here he is. He's now living the dream. Finally, he's living the dream. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. I've now met my goal in life. I can die now.
You've met your goal in life.
I've made it to the big leagues now. I feel like Madonna.
I've often said that, set your bar low in life, and then you'll be smiling. It's these people that are mardy and miserable. It's because they set the bar too high way too
That's
early.
right.
That's
That's right.
it.
Aim low. Aim low.
Aim low. That's it, mate. So yeah, thanks for being on, mate. As I say, it's something that Meet the Tube was something that I really enjoyed back in the day, and it's probably the longest running series, if you can call it that, on my channel as well. It's something that I did just to meet tubers, really. So the first ever Meet the Tuber was Ben Shemuzo, and actually went out to meet Ben. And
Yeah.
as there were 26 in total, but are now lost forever. So we're going to rebuild. We're not going to talk about that. We're not going to talk about what went before, and we're going to rebuild. So yeah, and I think actually now it's quite a common thing now. I mean, Meet the Tuber used to be quite a rare, unique thing. A lot of
Right.
people didn't do that.
Everyone's ripped you off, Des. Everyone's ripped
No,
you
I
off.
encourage them to do it. If you remember back in the day, I always said, see,
It's
someone's got to set
infectious,
the
Des.
trend, Rob. Someone's got to set the trend. You
That's
know,
right.
there are people that set the trends and people that follow them. So, but no, I always said that because I used to really enjoy doing them. It's a real good way to connect, and have that bit of time with people that you might not necessarily get. You know what it's like when we go to these
Yeah.
events and stuff. We all get together, and especially if you're with me, you won't get a word in.
Oh, I know that.
So yeah, so it's a good way to do it. So and as other people do, and I have to say, Dana's doing a cracking job. Hats
He
off,
is
hats off
fantastic.
to Dana because he's really brought everyone together in this time when we need to be together as well. When we can't be. So
That's right.
I think it's quite unique that it's been a year where there will be no meetups. I know Pete's Arcade Club gathering got cancelled. Obviously, everything else is getting cancelled, throughout the year. Just on the back of that, actually, before we get into this, I did speak to Andy at Arcade Club last night. So I was obviously a bit worried about how they're getting on, because obviously they need a fair bit of footfall through the door to, pay the rent and everything. And he assures me that everything's fine. So yeah, hopefully they'll be open back up soon, and when they do, we'll have to descend and stick some coin in the register, as it were. So I'm going to get straight into. I've got some questions here, Rob. I've been racking
I'm
my
embracing
brain.
myself.
No, no, no. I've racking my brain up while I've been sat in the garden burning my head and drinking Moretti, because it's stunning out there today. It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really nice. I thought I'll jot some stuff down. And what I'd like to do is go into kind of an area that isn't really talked about a lot. It's something you're really passionate about, and I know you've got a lot of time for. But we'll get to that in a minute. So the first thing I want to talk about is your layoff and why that came about. Because you've just had quite a break off YouTube. I know I'm the last person that needs to be asking anybody about doing stuff with their channel and stuff, but you kind of went away for a while, and I just wondered what the thought process in that was, and why you felt you needed to go away, and also why you're back now, why you felt you needed to come back now.
To be honest, I never actually intended to be off for this long. It was just a simple matter of the fact that at the time, I just kind of got tired of it. Like I kind of felt like I hit a brick wall, and I wasn't enjoying it.
Yeah.
So like how they usually say, everyone says if you're not feeling it, don't do it.
Yeah.
Never feel pressurized to make a video. It should be something you enjoy.
Mm.
So I just kind of felt I got to a point where I wasn't really enjoying it. It became a bit of a chore. So I thought I would take a little bit of a break from it. I never intended, I never intended to kind of be off for like nearly a year. It was pretty much.
Yeah.
It was just meant to be like a month or so, but what happens is that life just kind of takes over, and with the way that my sort of work schedule was, because I work evenings, I basically work nights pretty much. So like I'm usually like during the day I'm sleeping most of the day, and I'm working at night. So like I never really kind of found a time to sit and make videos because I just had a lack of energy. But then,
Yeah.
as I would recently discover, I had a health issue, which was also causing my lack of energy.
All right.
And so like once I kind of discovered that, it kind of, things changed, So I've just sort of tried to make changes, and in turn just try to sort of get my life back in order, and that included sort of going back to YouTube and sort of doing what stuff that I did enjoy, because there's been a lot of prior to me sort of coming back, there was a few moments before where I had like a few false starts. Like I actually did make some videos,
Yeah.
and I didn't like it, so I scrapped them. You know, and you know me, like I don't edit none of my videos. It's a one take wonder. So like if I make a video and I feel it's crap, I'm not going to do it again because I won't have the same level of energy again.
Yeah, I've tried that before. I have to say that there's very little on the cutting room floor in here. Like yourself, I don't edit. I don't stop and start. I just set it going in a riff. In fact, Meet the Tuber is the only time I ever write anything down, and there's no script, but I might write some bullet points down, and that's simply because I know I'll forget, because my brain's old and addled, and can't hold information for longer than 5 minutes at a time. When you've watched my videos, there's many a time I'll actually forget what I'm talking about halfway through. What I'm saying. But I went at a similar thing to yourself. I felt I was stale, you know what I mean? I didn't feel like I had enthusiasm. And something too he just said on that last video I made, actually, he said you looked enthusiastic, and I think that's it. Like you say, if you're not and you force it, everyone's going to smell it anyway. We can see it a mile away.
Right.
And we're kind of that channel, aren't we? Hearts on your sleeve. What you see is what you get,
Can I also say that actually it was I did obviously during the time I was off, I did have people sort of like either DMing me messages or leaving comments on my old videos about when I was going to come back and whatnot. And of course, when I went to see you guys in Bury for the arcade club, so many people got on my case in a good way. But like I swear, like so many people got on my case about getting back on YouTube while I was out there, and but do you know what? When you have people telling you in person, like you just start to realize that what you do kind of matters to some people.
Yeah.
That people give a shit.
Yeah.
Not like, but it's just because you don't think it. Like you just sort of think like I should just be lucky. Like 10 people give a crap about my video. But when people start bugging you in a good way. But when they just sort of, and you kind of realize, look, so it was really from when I came back from Bury, that was around the time that I was like, okay, I need to get back on this. But again, because my life the way it was, I wasn't able to get back sooner. But again, it was just because lack of energy and stuff, and which I later found out was because of my condition. So but
luckily you're on top of that now, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good then. Yeah. Our lass had a similar thing. And she didn't realise that it wasn't just that we were knackered. There was something else. There's something else underlying. But and sometimes I think it's good to have a bit of a break as well and a bit of a reset. Right. I mean, I find I'm pressing reset all the time. With everything that I do in here.
In your case, literally, Daz. You stop your channel. You literally resetting it.
Going back to what you said there, I agree with that. I think a lot of people don't realise. And I think it's because we've got a lot of humility, us guys. You know what I mean? We're not trying to be somebody. And I think those people, for me, I've always said I never expect anybody to watch. So when people do watch, it's nice. It's nice. It's a nice feeling. It kind of, it kind of reaffirms what you're doing. You know what I mean? And and I like the fact that it's the community that's interacting as well, because that's what I'm all about. So when I did reset, literally, I didn't appreciate what my content meant to some people, and what I mean by that is, and I should know this more than others, because there's certain YouTubers, I'll use their content not for the information or not for the core subject, but because they might relax me, or I might feel good after watching one of their videos. It's like watching a program that makes you laugh, and you get some relaxation from that, or some escapism, or just a 10-minute relief from maybe a bad situation that you're in. So I didn't realize that, and I should have. That like I said, not masses of people, maybe just a handful of people, but if those people get something from what I do, and they're not necessarily interested in what's going on, they get something else from it, then great, and that made me think long and hard, because, as I say, there are certain channels that I use for that as well. I mean, I don't know if you're the same. Are there channels that you watch not necessarily for the subject, but for the the person, or how it makes you feel when you're watching the video?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not to sound corny, but it's you guys. It's I like a lot of what you say. I mean, like in your case, Darren, like I don't have arcade machines. I don't have a PC Engine. Yeah, I watch your videos. Because I like the way you come across. It's like I say, it's less about what you're talking about, but more about how you come across.
Yeah.
That kind of makes me want to watch it. Because they. Like I've really got no reason to watch videos on arcade 1-ups. I'll never have them, because I don't have the space. I'd love to have them, but I don't have the space for them. So I wouldn't torture myself. But like I don't watch other channels on arcade 1-ups.
Yeah.
I'm interested in them, but I'll just be torturing myself. But in your case, I'll make a special case, because like I just like your personality. I like the way you come across.
Cheers, thanks for saying that. But I just want to clarify to everyone: this is not the backdrop that's going to be there, and that's it. In fact, I'm going to turn around and use the other side a lot more, because I'm going to get like lumbered as the arcade 1-up guy, and I'm not. I like them, and they serve a purpose. But this stuff behind me, or in front of me, behind the camera, is as important, if not more so, and more relevant. This is, and as everyone will say, Tootie will more than likely say, it'll all be gone next year anyway. And he's probably right. He's probably right. Yeah, but it's a journey. It's another part of the journey.
Oh, I don't doubt that, Des. I know next year you'll be on something completely different. I know that. I don't doubt that for 1 second.
I've always said, try everything at least twice. You might like it.
Yeah, but you know what? Like, what I was going to say was that it's everyone, like all your mates are going to have different things that they're interested in. You don't need to shut out just because they may not correlate with what you like.
Yeah, exactly.
I think sometimes it keeps it interesting that everyone has their own sort of niche and things that they enjoy. It's what keeps life interesting. If we were all exactly the same, that'd be boring.
No, exactly right. And I blame YouTube for a lot of what happens in here, because I am. If you look at my report cards from school, right, it always said, Darren is very easily led. So it's all your lot's fault, really, because all I had was my Mega Drive and a SNES. But when I found YouTube, Jesus Christ, here we are, 10 years later, and I've had everything and anything. Pretty much. And it has been inspired by other tubers and what they collect. But like I say, I'm still waiting for a game coming off the back of your last video. That you held up and I'd never seen before. And I thought, yeah, that does look really cool. That, and you're known for having good taste in games as well, and you will find. You're one of those people that I will watch and I look at what you've picked up, and I know that if it floats my boat at all, it's gonna, because I take your recommendation on as it's like champion 2D Rob seal of quality.
I appreciate it. You know what?
You'll find gems and stuff as well. You're good at that.
Well, you know what? Like it's weird when people started pointing that out at first, right? Like I kind of just always assumed that's what everyone did, because like I know, like you just, because the thing is, like when I started sort of collecting as such, like when it came to Mega Drive and Super Nintendo, I just thought it was a no-brainer. Look for the good games, that's what you want. I mean, I guess it's because I never went for full sets. So like naturally, if I'm gonna have a collection of Mega Drive games, I want the best games.
Yeah.
So in order to do that, like I knew that there was gonna be a lot of shit I didn't want.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but I wasn't like 100% knowledgeable on every single game on the Mega Drive. So then I went out of my way to make the research, you know. But in the beginning, you know, I just had the most titles that everyone has, you know. And when it came to Super Nintendo, most of the games I was buying were the games that everybody knows. It's only once I got those games, then it was like, well, what's next? What else do I want? You know, and that's when you start to delve deep into it, you know.
So have you had any sort of? I know you've done a lot of swings and hits. Have you had any misses? Have you like bought a game that you thought was going to be good and then turned out not to be? That you
oh
just
yeah, of course. Like I've had let me try and think. I've definitely had a few on the Game Boy Advance, just games I took chances on.
Yeah.
You know, and they turned out to be not very good.
Yeah.
I think a recent example of this was X-Men. I mean, I know most people are going to say, "Well, Rob, you should have known just by the fact that it was a movie license." But it was a X-Men the movie for the Game Boy Advance, and the reason why I bought it was because it was developed by WayForward.
Right.
And WayForward are known for making quality 2D games.
Yeah.
So I took a chance on it, and it's not awful, but it's just like it's far from one of their better efforts.
Right.
You know, but you take a chance on stuff, you know, because that's how you find out about these things.
I'll do that, and I almost use YouTube like a magazine, like I used to use back in the day. So you know, you'd flick through. There'd be very little information other than what that magazine was saying, and you'd have your screenshots and all the rest of it. And you spent your money based on screenshots a lot of the time, especially way back in the day. And as you know, they used to lie to you. So if you've got a Commodore 64 game and you were looking at the screenshots, they were probably the Amiga screenshots, or they'd kind of mug you off like that, wouldn't they? A lot of the time.
Oh, listen.
Yeah.
Back when I was a kid, that was like in the pre-internet age. That's just how we all did it. It was either pictures in the magazine and pictures at the back of the box, and you took a chance on it. Yeah. This is why, like even like some of my childhood games, like I ended up with such crappy games like Back to the Future Part 3 on the Mega Drive, because like in my mind, I thought it was going to be awesome, and then I played it, and it was like, oh no, not so much.
Yeah.
You know, like, there was a lot of those. I even back when I was a little kid with the NES, I didn't have that many games on the NES, but I only managed to get like 5 games. But there was a couple that I sort of traded in and stuff. And I remember this because my mate. I went with my mate. His dad took him to a game shop, so he wanted to buy him a NES game, and I went with him. I went along with him, and I was the one that actually chose the game for him. And the game I chose for him was Ninja Gaiden.
Right.
You know? Which everyone knows, it's an absolute classic, right?
Yeah.
And the only reason why I chose it was because I saw the cover on the box and it looked awesome. You know. Because I was like, it's a ninja on the front of the box. It looks awesome. Buy that game. And then my mate was like, yeah, okay, I'll buy that game. But you know, here's the funny thing, right? So I tried to do the exact same thing for myself, and I went to the shop and I saw another game again with a ninja guy on the front. I thought, oh, fantastic! This is cool as hell. The game wound up being an absolute average game. It was Wrath of the Black Manta. That's what it was called.
Wrath of the Black Manta. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a Taito release. Which actually would have thought, you know, if I'd known a bit more about companies, I would have thought that also would have been a good sign. And I think, well, Taito, that's a good company.
Yeah.
But the game itself, it's a ninja game. It's a ninja action platformer, but it's Ninja Gaiden. It is not.
It's not. Yeah. So maybe that's your gift is choosing games for other people, but not necessarily for yourself.
Well, fortunately,
for me, it was just games that there were 2 major things. One, could I afford it? That was the main thing. I could remember walking into Rotherham from my local village, which at the time then would be 7 miles, and I remember it was in the summer. It was an FA Cup final. I'm sure it was an FA Cup final. It was a big football day. I mean, I'm not a football guy, so please excuse my ignorance. But it was. I know it was that because there was very little people out and about. They were all in watching the TV. And I'd got like my pocket money, which was I'd saved up like 2 weeks worth, and I'd got sort of like £3 or £4, something like that. And our local shop was Microfun. That was a shop in Rotherham. So me and my mate decided to walk to Rotherham and back again, because if we used the money for the bus fare, we'd have obviously less money for the games. That's how committed we were. So we walked, and it was a red hot day. I remember it was scorching hot. So we walked into town and got to Microfun, and I think the only game that I could afford was a puzzle game, and it was absolute dog shit. I think it was like £1.99. And it was the only game on the shelf that I could afford. So I picked that up, and I thought, well, I've walked to town for this. I'm not going home without something, you know what I mean? And I had 20 at the time, and my mate had a Commodore 64, and it was the same game, was on both systems. So we both bought the same game. I bought it for the VIC-20, and he bought it for Commodore 64, but it was absolute fucking dog shit. It was just like you know, like those sliding block games that you could get. It's like a little plastic thing, and you slide.
Yeah, I know exactly.
It.
Yeah,
it's basically like a digital version of that. It lasted about 10 seconds, and just fucking threw it to one side. It was absolute dog shit. But yeah, that was
basically the equivalent of like a mobile game, like just one of those throwaway mobile games.
No, it wasn't as good as that. It was absolutely diabolical. But yeah, I mean, some were hits, some were misses, but that's what we relied on back in the day, weren't it? We relied on the magazines being honest, and I'm sure they weren't. I'm sure they were, you know, there was some kind of shenanigans going on. Sorry, man, I just realised this radiator's on at the side of me. Why is my heating on? It's like 23 degrees outside. Yeah, I'm sure there was some kind of, you know, backhanders going on. But again, even back then, you know, if you picked up a game, again, I used to do that. I'd look at the, you know, who made it. So an Imagine game or an Ocean game, you know what I mean? Or a Jeff Minter game, I'd be thinking, yeah, that's going to be a good game, you know. And I think people get kind of, and in more modern times, Capcom, you know, through the 90s and stuff, you couldn't really.
Well, you know, as a kid, like I didn't have the Spectrum, but a couple of my friends did, and they had like a few of the Ocean cassettes. And I remember I used to look at the covers and think, this game looks awesome, like, because you just like, you don't know any better. Like, and I remember seeing so many games. I specifically remember the RoboCop game.
Yeah.
Because my friend had like quite a lot of Ocean games, and I just remember them being scattered. I remember looking at all of them and just thinking to myself, "This looks awesome. This looks awesome." And I remember I played a few of them, and I just wasn't impressed. Like I remember playing the Thundercats game, and I wasn't impressed by it at all. And I think that's partly. This is like. I didn't think I even had a NES at this point, because I wasn't really in, like I was very late into gaming. I used to just have like a few of the LCD handhelds, the Game & Watches and whatnot. So I never really had no PC, no nothing. I was very late into the console gaming as well. So my friend had it. I was curious, but I was so let down. Like even back then, like I just wasn't blown away. Like, I'm sorry to insult all the Spectrum lovers here, but like,
that's actually quite right. And and I'll bet that the screenshots on that Spectrum game were from the Commodore.
Probably. Do you know what? I think they were.
They used to do that a lot.
Because they did. I remember being excited by it, but they would always let me down. So I guess that's probably why I was in no rush to buy a console. You know?
Yeah. See, my grounding was in computers, so but I missed out totally on 16-bit computing. So I was well involved in 8-bit, but by the time 16-bit came out, I kind of moved. I got my first car, and that was like sucking all the money out of my wallet, because it was an old banger, and you know, that stuff like that. So I kind of went away. And I didn't come back until the Mega Drive was being released in like '89. That's when I got back into the console thing. But talking about that, and this goes back to what I said I was going to talk to you about, was that don't get a lot of traction, and people don't talk about this a lot. Now I know there are some dedicated channels for this, and it's handhelds. I want to talk to you about handhelds. Everyone's had them, you know, and as you say, you started out like that, and so did I. You know, I had handheld stuff, and then later on the little desktop sort of grandstand, you know, LCD games and stuff like that. And everyone I've ever spoke to's had a Game Boy. You know, everyone had a Game Boy, and that was really the first handheld that I thought. As I say, I had the Game & Watches. I think I had the Cement Factory. and a couple of other little handhelds that I had. But until I got the Game Boy, obviously with the interchangeable games, that was a real game changer. Pardon the pun, but that was a real game changer. So with respect to handhelds, and I know you're a big fan of that, what was your first handheld? What was the last handheld you bought? And out of all of that, what would you say is the best one for you?
Well, the very first gaming anything I ever owned, I've mentioned this in the video before, was a Thomas the Tank Engine LCD handheld, which I actually looked up on eBay. It's probably worth about 300 quid now.
Yeah.
Because and the reason why I bring that up is because I actually had it like fully working well into my 20s, but it was in my mum's possession. Yeah. And then she went and gave it away to a family member, and it was long gone. And she didn't tell me about it until after the fact. So I was like, "What are you doing?"
I've been there.
Yeah. But yes, that was my very first. I must have got that when I was about I must have been about 4 years old. Because because there was a year where I didn't live in this country. I actually lived in Colombia for 1 year.
Yeah.
And it would have been in 1986. That's when I lived there. And so I must have had it beforehand, because I took it with me. So I must have had it in 1985, because I believe it came out around that time. So I had that for a long time, and then shortly after that, I never actually owned the Game and Watch. I just played on other people's.
Yeah.
But then my next LCD game was the Konami Turtles game.
Right.
You know, the one that was really oddly shaped.
Yeah. I think I've got that actually somewhere.
Yeah, you have.
Yeah.
So I had that, and then my first proper gaming system was the Game Boy, which my mum bought for me, and it was packaged in with Tetris like everybody else's, and I got Super Mario Land with it as well.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I only had that for about a year because it eventually got stolen.
Well, bastards.
Yeah, so I only managed to keep that for you. So I had that for about a year, but then by the time it got stolen, I already had my NES, so it wasn't that bad. Okay. But yeah, it got stolen with Super Mario Land in it, and it would be a few years until I would get another one.
Yeah.
Like a friend of mine from school, much later on, about a good 5 years, 4 or 5 years later, he would give me his Game Boy, and then I sort of picked up a few more games still during the 90s, because the Game Boy was still selling. Well into the 90s. So
yeah.
So even though I'd lost my Game Boy, I lost a few years with it, I was still able to pick up for it, a few years after the fact.
Yeah. With me, I had a DMG, but then, let's say, got into consoles, and I didn't buy another Nintendo handheld until the Game Boy Advance. So I didn't get a color, although I'm doing them now. In fact, I've been playing a color today. And again, same as you, Mario Land was my game. I could speedrun that game at one point. I used to take it to work with me, and when the gaffer had gone home and everything, I just used to sit there and play Mario Land until the end of my shift. So I could really play that, and it's actually it's a real fun game to play. There are some challenging parts of it, but it's not. I can get to kind of, even now, only been picking it up and playing it. Basically, I'm using that as like my test cartridge. So when I buy a system in, that goes into it, and I play a couple of levels just to test it out. And then when I've modified the console, that's the game I use as well to kind of test it again, make sure it's all still working. And I could get to like kind of the end 2 levels very quickly again. I found that I could do that. But I'm not quite finished it yet, and I do know that the end sort of music on that is awesome, and some of the in-game music on that game is great. It plays so tightly. It's great, that game, and with the upgraded screens now, as you know, it just looks stunning. It's like a brand new version again, because when I'm playing it on the old, I mean that's the thing with the older Game Boys, is the screens, and especially the Game Boy Advance. Jesus Christ, is that
worst? Like I was gonna say, like I really wish they had color screens from the off, because I bought a Game Boy Advance back in the early 2000s when it came out, and I only bought 2 games for it. I bought Final Fight 1 and Astro Boy.
Right.
And the reason why I just ended up dropping the system, because like I hated that screen, and I had to get one of those light things, and I couldn't stand it. I mean, the Game Boy wasn't even so bad. I'll be honest with you, the Game Boy, I could play a lot better with the Game Boy screen than I ever could with the Game Boy Advance screen. The Game Boy Advance screen was awful.
Yeah, you couldn't
Like,
even adjust it. It's like, at least with the DMG or the colours, you can adjust the contrast and you can,
yeah,
get yourself to where you can actually see it, you know. But yeah, it was. I mean, now with the modified screens I'm putting in them, it turns it into a completely different console. It really does, and it makes the games come alive there, and you appreciate how good it actually was.
well, this is the thing. Like since the sort of the AG 101 and of course the IPS version 2 screens now, which are even better. Like for me, I feel lucky that I accumulated these games now because now I can really take advantage of them. But back then, I was discouraged to buy any more games because like I just wasn't feeling that system at all at the time. Not because of what it could do, but because that screen was just off-putting.
Yeah.
And I never played anything else for like a long time.
I don't know what they were thinking because for like a 32-bit handheld, and it was basically a portable SNES, and there's some killer games on it, but it will have put a lot of people off. Like you say, you just had to have the light just right, and even when you got the light just right, it wasn't that good either. You just couldn't see it. You just couldn't see it. Whereas now you can. It's worth owning again, I think. And I've been playing a hell of a lot of mine since I've been modifying them and really thinking, do you know what? This is a killer game. This now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Now I can see it. It actually makes it playable.
But it put me off. It put me off of handhelds for like pretty much all of the early 2000s. I mean, like I didn't even get like a DS until till I think the 3DS was about to come out. I got a DS like quite late in the day, and so I was put off Nintendo handhelds. I do remember there was a period where like I think one of my mum's friends' kids had a Game Boy Advance SP. So like I was aware that they had transitioned to color, but by that point I didn't care anymore.
Yeah.
So I was strictly on consoles. I was just all about PS2.
Yeah.
So I didn't care anymore. But then I don't really remember what it was that made me want to go back to Game Boy Advance. But because that came once I met you guys. Like it was really. But during that sort of early sort of the first half of the 2000s, like I just didn't care. It was for me, it was like a handheld black hole time.
Yeah. That's surprising because I know you're really, really into it. So talking about Game Boy and Game Boy Advance, then, and I know, and I just want some recommendations from you, basically. So what do you think are the must-haves? I know I'm starting to look for Drill Dozer. Is it Drill Dozer?
Drill Dozer, that's right.
Drill Dozer, yeah. I think that's been on my radar previously, but you reminded me of that. I'm pretty certain that's been on my radar before, but you reminded me of that. So, and I'm just going to go for loose cartridges. I'm not going to go for a box or anything like that. And it's quite sustainable that as well. You can pick up, pick them up pretty cheap. So, what would you say that out of what you've got now? What are the top recommendations that you can give?
Okay, I would split it into two camps. So you've got your US exclusives, and of course you have your European releases. So like things like Drill Dozer only got like a US release, so it's a US exclusive. Another excellent game that only came out in the US is Double Dragon Advance, which I will also say, and I will say this, it is by far the best Double Dragon game.
Wow!
Like by far the best Double Dragon game, and I will fight you if you challenge me on it.
Well, I can't see there being quite a very long queue. Anyone that's met you to get in that fight queue.
I will say this, because trust me, I had my doubts, but anyone who's played Double Dragon Advance,
I'm gonna write that down.
Back me on it.
All right, mate. I'll be on eBay this afternoon looking for that Double Dragon.
Just be careful when it comes to Double Dragon Advance, because unfortunately it's one of those carts that has been bootlegged a lot.
Oh, so, I'm good for. Yeah. I've got emulation down here, mate. You know what I'm at. As long as it plays and I can play the game, I don't give a shit what it's running on.
I'll say it's the one thing that's ruined a Game Boy Advance collecting now, especially if you're just going for single carts, loose carts, is the fact that I've just noticed on eBay there are so many fakes. Before, when I was collecting, the only fakes that were available were just Pokemon games. So I didn't care about Pokemon, so I never had to worry. But now I've noticed they're bootlegging stuff like Ninja Cop, You know, which obviously, I mean, look, if you find a Ninja Cop loose cart for £5, it's a bootleg. You know,
Yeah.
but yeah. So like, I noticed that Double Dragon was one of the games I've noticed that was bootlegged. So unfortunately, I mean, the same can be applied to a lot of systems, including Super Nintendo. Like I've been trying to get back into Super Nintendo, and I've just been put off because now I don't feel I can trust a lot of what I see now.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's rife across all the formats. It is, and it's because printers have got a hell of a lot better. And they're putting the time and the investment into making sure the cartridge labels are just right, and even using the same kind of cardboard. And I know it's been said a while ago. I think it was Retro Dave actually first touched on this a couple of years ago now when they started to get really good reproductions. And they were saying, but how are you going to, in a few years, they're going to start having shelf wear. So they'll be even harder to spot because it'll just look like a shelf-worn game, And it is, you're right, unless you're taking the cartridge apart and, you're checking the board inside and stuff, it is a gamble. And you're right. I mean, and that's kind of put me off a lot as well. With the PC Engine, it's very difficult to copy a Hue card. I'm pretty safe with that. But with everything else, you're right. It's a real gamble, especially like I said, the high rolling stuff.
And it spread to Super Famicom as well. Like before, it used to just be a PAL or NTSC cart thing. It's also spread to Super Famicom, and I've also noticed now that it used to be just cartridge and box. Now they're also faking the manuals as well. So like if you see a supposedly complete copy, that's no guarantee that it's a genuine copy, which makes it more frustrating as well.
Now they are getting good. They are getting really, really good at it. What about Game Boy then? Or is it just
the original Game Boy?
What about Game Boy? Game Boy Advance. What was the other one you just said? Was it Ninja Cop? I've never heard of that.
Yeah, Ninja Cop was actually a game that did get a PAL release. It was a PAL and NTSC release. It's actually the last game that Konami made for the system. It came out very late.
Yeah,
it came out very late. It came out very late in the GBA life cycle, so most people didn't buy it, which is why it's so sought after.
Which is why it's rare and collectible. Yeah, not the rest of it. Okay.
In the US, it's known as Ninja 5.0. It has a different name.
Ninja 5.0.
Ninja 5.0. That's right.
That's the gangster version. Ninja 5.0.
It's a really great game. It plays a lot like Shinobi. It's like a Shinobi game.
Yeah, cool.
Combined with I'd say like a Bionic Commando.
All right. Okay. So there's like platforming elements.
Yeah, and you have like a rope which you swing as well. It's really cool.
Right.
Really good game.
One genre of game then that I know you've spoken about a lot, and I know it's a passion of yours and mine as well, and pretty much everyone really must enjoy a walk, ride, and fight. Everyone must enjoy a side-scrolling beat 'em up. There's got to be. Everyone's got at least one that they like.
If someone tells me they don't like side-scrolling beat 'em ups and they're not female, I don't trust you.
I think that's a good. I think that's the way to go on it. I think you're right.
If I can't bond with you over an arcade cab of Final Fight or Turtles in Time, then I don't trust you. I don't trust you.
So I know you mentioned on the stream, and it's one that I think you put me onto it as well. Actually, I know it's one that a lot of people don't go to, but when they go to it, they think this is really good, and that's Batman Returns. On the SNES, it's a really good side-scrolling beater. I mean, if you don't like Batman, and who doesn't like Batman anyway? But even if you didn't, as a side-scrolling beater, I think it really stands up. I'd put it up there with Streets of Rage. I would.
It is like it's fantastic. Like if anything, I can't believe, because being someone that grew up with the Mega Drive, and everyone who's played the Mega Drive version of Batman Returns know how shafted we got.
Yeah, it sucks ass. Yeah.
Because like we got that poor excuse for a game, and the Super Nintendo got this awesome like side-scrolling beat 'em up. And you know what? Just to even pour salt in the wounds, even the NES port of Batman Returns is a really good side-scrolling beat 'em up.
Oh, right.
I'd never heard of it until in recent years. But the Super Nintendo version game was like amazing. Like I couldn't believe it. Like I remember seeing footage of it as a kid, and it looked amazing. I never played it, but it looked amazing. And then, sure enough, many years later, as an adult, when I finally bought my own copy,
Yeah.
you know, it totally lived up. But I mean, it's Konami. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, there's only two companies in the 16-bit era that I trusted with side-scrolling beat 'em ups.
Yeah. They've been solid though, aren't they, Konami? I know in recent years Capcom have kind of gone off the boil a bit. I was kind of similar with that. You'd always look at Capcom as being a quality game producer, and yeah, and I'm not saying that they've lost the plot altogether. I mean, there's still some cracking games out there, but I think for that era, like I said, Konami, shooters, fighters, you know, anything really that they put their hands on is a great game. You know, they for me they really stand out as one of the all-time greats. Really, Konami.
They had really talented programmers.
Yeah.
That knew the most of these systems. Like their work on, I will say this, even over the Super Nintendo, their work on the Mega Drive was stellar because a lot of people shit on the Mega Drive for being technologically inferior to the Super Nintendo. It had less colors. You know, the sound wasn't as good. But Konami, the programmers at Konami really knew how to play the Mega Drive to their strengths.
Yeah.
So like not to take anything away from the Konami games on the Super Nintendo because they were amazing. But like for me, what Konami did on the Mega Drive was just absolutely blew me away. Like Contra Hardcore on the Mega Drive. That game, when I was a kid, that game amazed me because like no one thought it would be possible for that game to be able to run on the Mega Drive.
No, it's stunning.
Everyone used to say it when I was a kid. Like I used to love Super Probotector Contra 3 on the Super Nintendo. It was my most loved game on the Super Nintendo. I loved it to death, and all my friends knew that, and they would all say to me, "Well, that game would never run on the Mega Drive, Rob. That game would never run on the Mega Drive because you don't have Mode 7. It doesn't have Mode 7. You can't. It doesn't. It can't. It's not able to handle it, Rob."
Yeah.
You know, and there was a moment there where like I used to cry myself. No, I didn't. But, but like, cause I love that game so much. Like I really did. And then when I remember reading Mean Machines, and they announced that they were going to come out with a one for the Mega Drive. I was so excited, and I remember just just staring at all the little screenshots and just counting down the days for that release. When it came out, I bought that game on week 1.
Yeah.
Like, which for a kid that didn't have no money, I made sure I had money for that game.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah. And it is, as you say, it's a standout. You know, it really is a standout title. But Treasure as well. If we can throw a bit of some props out for Treasure as well on the Mega Drive. They, like you said, they really squeezed out every last bit, you know, of the Mega Drive that they could.
But the Treasure guys were former Konami guys.
There you go.
You know, like, 'cause I was going to bring that up before.
Yeah.
Like they were the guys that were working on the arcades stuff of like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know, you know, in-house politics. They struck out on their own, you know, and they carried on doing the amazing work that they do.
Yeah. It just shows you, doesn't it? You know, it's not necessarily the strengths or the weaknesses of the system. It's how to work with it. And like you say, those companies get the best out of it because they work with it. You know, they're going to work within it. And I think, you know, if you want to be lazy, then don't bitch that your game, you know, wasn't as good as you thought it might be because you've just been lazy at programming, you know. But it just shows you that. And I think I put them side by side. You know, there are standout games on both those systems. You know, and it was
absolutely
it was a pleasure to be around both of them. You know, back in the day, and obviously you've got that rivalry. And yeah, the SNES. Can't take anything away from that. Nintendo did a brilliant job with that. I don't think it blew the Mega Drive away. If you look at it now with what's available on both systems, I think in the playground, yeah, you know, and if you're looking at stats and, you know, all the rest of it, I mean, the fact that they got Street Fighter running on it was just, you know, that was killer, absolutely killer to have that, such a good version of Street Fighter running on it. But then the Mega Drive did it as well a little bit later on, but they got it out of it. And it's a really good version.
It really is. It really, I mean, I know that a lot of people take issue when Championship Edition first came out, you know, we were stuck with 3-button pads. But, you know, it was only shortly after that, they released a 6-button pad, you know. I couldn't actually back then. I couldn't afford the official 6-button pad. I wound up buying like a third-party one,
Yeah,
which worked perfectly well, and that's what I used when I was a kid.
yeah,
And but like once they started releasing the 6-button pads, all was well. It
yeah.
was
Yeah,
fantastic.
you could actually play it then, but I
Yeah.
still think it stands up at the side of the SNES version. I really do. Talking of pads, I've got some real random stuff just jotted down here. This is what I do. So,
Okay.
pads or sticks, Rob? So, I've been a big advocate of pads back in the day, but since the birth of Arcade Club, and since getting arcades back in here, I really prefer a stick now. But it tends to be down to the game. I have to say, if it's a platformer, got to have a pad. If it's a driver, I've got to have a pad. Obviously, if it's a little bit more of a subtle input, I think the pad's the way to go for me. But for shooters, for fighters, for beaters, sticks all the way, man. What would
Well,
you say?
well, it's not a simple choice for me because like I grew up in the arcades, so like I love arcade machines. You know, they work well for me. But the reality is, I spent most of my time gaming on pads,
Yeah,
and so like I when it came to certain games, specifically fighters, I prefer pads just because I spent a large, like for example, with Street Fighter 2, for example, I spent a large chunk of my time either on the Super Nintendo or the Mega Drive playing Street Fighter 2 over the arcade. I played a lot of Street Fighter 2 on the arcade, but most of my time was on the consoles.
yeah.
So I found that I've conditioned myself to do the moves better on D-pads.
Yeah.
You
Did you
know,
find it
so
frustrating when you went to the arcade and you were trying to trying to play
oh,
like you did at home and it was just,
I honestly like for me like just trying to pull a dragon punch, I cannot do it on a joystick. Like it to me, it's the most frustrating thing. Like I can play a side-scrolling beat 'em up or a shooter with an arcade stick. Like I sometimes do that at home. Like sometimes I hook up my arcade stick, and play some of the. I do that.
mm,
I can play those fine stick or pad.
mm.
Either way will work for me. But when it comes to 2D fighters, I have to have a pad.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't get me wrong. I won't. If someone offers me a stick instead, I won't bemoan it. I'll use it, but
Mm.
I know I just won't be nearly as good.
Yeah, it feels more natural to you. I used to be like that. Obviously, as soon as, because I was playing Street Fighter in the arcade, then when it was released on the Super Famicom, I played it to death on that, and it wasn't until I can remember one weekend, I think me and the wife went away. It was Blackpool, and I actually completed it in the arcade. I completed the machine in the arcade.
Yeah.
Um, and as soon as I got home, I was like playing it again, it just took so long to dial into that stick because I was so used to the Super Nintendo pad,
Oh,
and the way that sat in your hand as well, it was almost like the Super Nintendo pad was developed with Street Fighter in mind. It just works so well, even the shoulders are so easy to get hold of,
right.
and Nintendo's pads being Nintendo's pads, the D-pad's excellent, always has been. So, like you say, you could with your thumb, you can pull those moves off a lot easier than with a stick. It's a hell of a lot different. It is a hell of a lot different. But if you want to have a challenge when you're out and about in an arcade, you've got to have some stick practice. Otherwise, it's gonna be no good.
I'm gonna say something controversial here, like really controversial here.
Oh,
People are gonna be out for blood. Metal Slug, Metal Slug in the arcade, unplayable for me. Can't play it
unplayable.
honestly.
Yeah,
Unplayable. Like I can't. Like for me, any action platformer that requires precision platforming, I can't play it with a stick.
yeah,
I don't know. Metal Slug for me works better with pads.
yeah.
And I know there's going to be people out there gunning for my blood.
No, I think there'd probably be a lot of people that would agree as well. Like I say, I think if there's precision involved, I mean, the only thing I would disagree with that is in a shooter. I feel when I've got a pad, especially directionally, the D-pad is a lot worse for me than a stick. I feel like I could be a lot more accurate with positioning my ship and stuff, and I can be a lot more reactive as well to whatever's
Yeah.
going on the
No, no,
street.
no. I don't dispute space shooters. Space
Yeah,
shooters and side-scrolling beat 'em ups, I think, can still work. But I think anything that requires like platform mechanics, like a side-scrolling running guns, I just find that I can't. They don't work with arcade sticks. Personally, I mean that's. I know there's going to be people that are going to be like, no, I can play them just fine. Well, I just don't think so. Like they to me they're like I can at least work with a 2D fighter with an arcade stick, but in terms of run and gun games like 2D running guns, I can't do them.
Can't do them. Got to be a pad.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
So pad and stick, basically, but more pad than stick, should we say? So talking about, go back there to what I was saying about all the different systems that I've owned and still own, and some I don't own. Would you say that there's any particular system throughout, what your involvement in all this that you never owned that you might want to dip your toe into? I know you mentioned PC Engine there. Is there any sort of system that you didn't have back in the day, that you've never owned that you would like to now?
Yes, the Sega Saturn.
Saturn. I would never put that together. I would never put that. I might have to buy you one. How is it that you've not got a Saturn?
No. Do you know what? Right, I'll say this, and I'll say, Scott, Sega Saturn lad, right? When we met up to go to the London gaming market, I think he said something same to me. He goes, Rob, how is it someone like yourself who champions 2D games,
2D fighters, that is the fucking powerhouse.
Like you champion 2D games, like you make a whole point that's what you love. Yet you don't have a Sega Saturn, the one system that was considered a 2D powerhouse. And you know what? He's absolutely right, because at the time, my reasons for not having a Saturn were justifiable. I mean, if I had more money back then, I probably would have had, both a PlayStation and a Saturn.
Yeah.
But the thing was, at the time, I didn't trust Sega, because I'm one of the very few people that bought a 32X and got burnt by it.
Yeah.
So I lost my faith in Sega during that 32-bit era. So I went for PlayStation, and while PlayStation, as we all know, didn't have the best 2D arcade ports, but they made up for it in other games. So it was never like I could tolerate having an inferior version of X-Men versus Street Fighter if it meant I could have a game like Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I think Sega have got a lot to answer for with that. I mean, I got burned with the Mega CD. That was a similar thing, and that was the start of the end for Sega for me, or the brand sort of loyalty, if you like. Not that I've ever been loyal to any one brand, but as you say, it put me off because I sank a hell of a lot of money into the Mega CD, and that's why I didn't go 32X, because I just thought they're going to do the same thing to me again, and they did. And like you say, you got burned on it, and that's why I went to Sony, and I dare say that's why you went to Sony, to the PlayStation. But it had such an impact, the PlayStation, and I think that Sega dropped the ball big time at the end of the Mega Drive's life. They should have just gone with Saturn.
Yeah.
Stop trying to wring the last bit of life out of it, the lifeblood out of the Mega Drive, and just gone with it. Instead of releasing two bolt-ons, that really were a little bit late to the party. Everything was moving away from that anyway. It was going to be CD-based, games. They should have just gone with Saturn, and it may have been a totally different, landscape for that whole Sony thing. Sony got such a grip on it straight away, and I think one of the major reasons why they did was because Sega let us down.
Yeah. Sega completely botched the Saturn. And they burnt their relationships with third-party developers. Yeah. And while Sony was doing the opposite, Sony made so many third-party friends.
Yeah.
Like that's because I remember, like, when I was considering getting a PlayStation, I did consider, like, is this going to go the way of the 3DO? Like, because back then, any new company that would come along with a system would ultimately fail. So like for me at the time, Sony. Like back in the day, Sony weren't known for games, for gaming systems. They were known for making games, because they did have like a gaming, I think, a production company, but they weren't known for making systems. So for us, it was like, for me anyway, I thought I couldn't help comparing it to like the 3DO and all these other sort of consoles that came and went.
Yeah, especially like you say, like Sony had never dipped the toe into that, so it was a real gamble. But Jesus Christ, did they get it right?
Well, that's just it. Like, everyone took a chance on it, and ultimately, it wound up being a great choice because the amount of games that came out for it, because even when the N64 came out, and again, no disrespect to anyone that loves the N64, but it was definitely the wrong choice to go cartridge because there was a natural progression, and everyone understood that if you needed good sound, you needed to go to CD-ROM format.
Yeah.
Because it could carry more data, and as I was watching the N64 during the whole time of the N64, I never had the inclination to buy one.
No. I bought one on launch just simply for Mario 64. That was the only thing I bought it for, really.
I was tempted by it, but to be honest with you, even during the PlayStation 1 era, like I really had a dislike for 3D platformers. Like, in fact, most of my games on the PlayStation were actually still 2D games. Because like I was one of those, like I was like, despite being a young kid, I was acting like an old man. I was like
I'm not having this newfangled 3D graphic stuff, rubbish.
Exactly, because even at the time, it still looked like shit to me. It really did. Like it's those polygons looked like shit to me because they didn't look right. The games that convinced me was Resident Evil 2 and Metal Gear Solid. And I played those demos because the very first Resident Evil I didn't like.
No.
I think I just wasn't ready for it yet. But then when Resident Evil 2 came out, they released the demo, and I wound up playing that demo so many times. So I eventually got used to the controls of it.
Yeah.
And so when the game finally came out, I had to have it, and I loved it. And
I think that's really what took it off, wasn't it? And that kind of gave birth to the story-driven game.
That's right.
The kind of almost like a playable movie type, an experience rather than a challenge of a game, more of an experience of a game, and until the point where we are now, where they're basically interactive movies, I bought the PlayStation for Ridge Racer, so that was simply why I bought that.
But ever since it was at that time, that to me was the death of the mascot platformer.
Yeah.
So for me, that I never liked, and to this day, I've never been able to really get invested in 3D platformers. I still make the exception for Mario games because Mario, whether it's 2D or 3D, will always have a place in my heart because Mario was like the very first proper game I played as a kid and I completed as a kid. So like I've always got love for Nintendo and Mario, but aside from that, very few 3D platformers. Like in fact, virtually none of them. Like I stick to 2D platformers to this day.
My favorite on the PlayStation's Klonoa Daughter Phantomile. I don't know if you've ever played that.
Yes, I have. I played the demo of it back in the day, but you see, that game's 2.5D. It's still a 2D game.
Back in the middle, isn't it? Yeah.
Because that game and the Pandemonium series,
yeah,
were games that I did enjoy. I never got around to buying them back in the day, but I did really like them. I played the Klonoa demo a lot as a kid as well.
Yeah,
I really did enjoy that. Yeah,
one of my favourites. It's great. I suppose really it's a pseudo 2D, isn't it? So it's more like an updated 2D game. But yeah, I mean, it's not a pure 3D roam around. It is very linear. You're still on that kind of path, left to right. That kind of thing, or right to left. But obviously, in an updated sort of, it looks like a 3D game. It looks like a 3D game. But yeah, the Saturn, that amazes me. So have you got any plans to get one in the near future?
Well, you see, I didn't really want to talk about it just yet, but you know what? I'll give you the exclusive, Daz.
Oh, here first. Yes, he is.
Yeah. So I am, unfortunately, because of what's been going on with now, all of those plans have been like put on indefinite hold.
Yeah.
But I was actually seriously looking at buying a Saturn, but I want to get a modded Saturn.
Yeah, I would suggest go with what I've got set up here now. So, as someone who was a Saturn collector, shooters and fighters, Jesus Christ, you need deep pockets. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, the pseudo Saturn set up. So if you can get a action replay cartridge, we can flash you the pseudo Saturn, software onto that, and it'll just play gold discs. You can play anything on it then.
But you know what? Daz? I thought about going that route, but I think I still want to have the proper games.
All right, okay.
And I shit you not, if I ever do get a Saturn, I'm going for Hyperdual. I'm going straight for that game.
I've already bought that twice now, and I won't. I mean, I have still got it, but it's on a gold disc. But and it's a great game, but Jesus Christ! I mean, even like last night when I was doing that part 2 of my setup, I picked out Geki Rinden to put on in the background, and I thought, I wonder how much that is now. Geki Rinden was an expensive game, but it wasn't Hyperduel expensive. And I kind of just went on eBay, and there was one at £400, and I was like, "Oh man, no!"
Yeah.
I mean, Hyperduel is the most I've ever paid for a game. Was £300 when I bought it the second time.
It's not £300 no more.
I know, and it's better than an ISA, isn't it? A lot of this stuff. I keep saying to people at work. I mean, a mate of mine at work, Danny. Hey, Dan, you all right, mate? He used to collect Pokemon cards back in the day. And, you know, we've talked about, you know, not just our community, but other sort of sub-communities and stuff that collect and do all this other stuff with. It's exactly the same with the Pokemon. So he's buying cards that have been rated. You know, you can get the rated games that are sealed in Perspex. They're doing exactly the same thing with Pokemon cards. And he's just getting back into that. He's buying big boxes full of the booster packs. And he's looking for the gold, and then he's going to have them rated and all the rest of it. But yeah, the price of game just keeps going up, and we've been saying this for years now, aren't we? Oh, it'll tap out soon. It's going to get to a point where it's not stopped. Not from what I can see. I know that for sure. When I had the Saturn shooters, when I sold them, I doubled or tripled my money in most cases, and that's what bought the 2 candy cabinets. Yeah. You know, and everything I was running in those that paid for that and more. You know, so no, you're a brave man, mate. If you're going to step up to Japanese Saturn collecting, you're a brave guy.
Do you know what? Like even with the Mega Drive now, like I actually bought a couple of games for the Mega Drive the other day, so they haven't arrived yet. Just some big holes in my collection, and like just going through the Mega Drive games and seeing how much they go for now has been a serious eye opener.
Yeah,
like. It's actually been like, honestly, if I'd started collecting for the Mega Drive now, I would not have been at my level that I am with my collection.
If you're starting out now, you're seriously invested. There's no bargains anymore. You know, you are seriously invested. And I say these 4 cabinets, they've all been bought off the back of my Super Nintendo and Mega Drive collection, and I didn't have a lot of games. I'm talking 25 games each system.
Yeah.
So that puts that into perspective for you. You know, it's. But they were the gold that I'd kept back, if you know what I mean. They were the ones that were sought after. And I've only kept 2 cartridges. And in fact, one of them is a rebuy. Because I just really shouldn't have. And when I think it's Shadow Dancer, I'll say, you know, I did sell Shadow Dancer. And I got seller's regret instantly the moment it sold. But I was kind of convincing myself that I didn't need the physical media. Why do I need to physically own it? I can play that game whenever I like. You know, it's in there. And I was playing it the other night. And I was trying to get to the end again the other night. And but it's just something about that. I've got a story about that game. I remember where I was when I first saw it and when I bought it first. If you were to say to me, Sega nostalgia, my brain just says, you know, it's like a word association. I just say Shadow Dancer straight away. Those 3 things are so ingrained in my psyche, you know, that I had to buy it back, and it cost me £20 more than I sold mine for. So straight away, I know it went up in price. I was like, Jesus Christ.
Can I just tell you a quick story? Because I had Shadow Dancer as a kid. I've actually got a funny story about how I bought my copy of Shadow Dancer as a kid. It's actually quite funny. Back in the day when I was in secondary school, my school used to be at war with another secondary school, right? Nothing to do with me. It's just like that's when I came.
Brookdale.
Yeah, like it was like literally you would see kids from this other school and you would instantly fight. Okay, and I was never involved in any of that. I was to be perfectly honest with you, as a kid, I was a nerd. I was an in-betweener. Like I was, you know, I was nobody in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I was in a shop in the area, because basically our schools they're quite far apart, but in the sort of like the town centres where everyone sort of congregates.
Yeah.
So I was in this game shop, right, and I was looking at the Mega Drive game. I was looking to buy a Mega Drive game. So I went to go pick up Shadow Dancer. So as I'm taking it to the till, like I just hear a bunch of like rowdy kid voices, and I just noticed behind me, and I see kids from this school. I automatically, just by the uniforms, I automatically knew who they were. So like, just to avoid like because it really was that bad, where it was like if they like these kids would fight each other if they saw you. So like the moment I saw them come into the shop, I literally like zipped up my jacket, grabbed my game quickly, and like try to avoid them around the shop. I just walked my way out like I was Solid Snake, like trying to stealth my way out.
Death or Shadow Dancer. Yeah.
But the thing was, but when they came in, I was just about to take it off the shelf, so like I had to run to that till quite quickly. When I went out, so I was like pretty much telling the guy to hurry up and let me pay for it, like
to get out quick before the rumble started. Oh, cool. Yeah.
Oh,
we've all got stories. I mean, that's the good thing about it as well. It's not just it's the time it reminds you of as well, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's not just the game that you might have had over, but it's time around it as well. And sometimes there's tragic things around, that, and sometimes it's funny or stories that remind you of simpler times, mate. And that's all nostalgia is. It's just adults remembering when things were a bit simpler.
Yeah. I could never get rid of my childhood games because there's so much nostalgia attached to them that even if I sold them and got them back, they wouldn't be the same games.
Yeah.
Because they weren't my games. They weren't the ones that I bought. Like my copy of Spider-Man Venom Separation Anxiety has a piece of paper in it that my mate wrote down all the passwords in his crappy handwriting. Like if I was to lose stuff like that,
I
think the same to me anymore.
It's like more important than the game, really.
It really is.
Attachment of that to it. Yeah. No, I get you. See, I think where mine comes in, that kind of selling it if it's not being used thing, is that I had to trade my games in. If I was to buy another game, I had to trade it in to buy another game. I didn't have the money. Even when I first started working, my job was really low paid. And even then I could afford to buy a game, but I couldn't afford to buy the next one without shopping that in a bit against it. Do you know what I mean? So I never had a collection. I probably had 3 games at any one time for any system that I ever owned. You know what I mean? And so to have, when you get to be an adult and you may have some disposable income, and you can have a few, that's kind of dangerous then, because then you end up with, like you say, if you go for serious collecting, you end up with a hell of a lot of stuff that you wouldn't really have bought anyway.
That's right.
That's
also why.
I've said that before. Yeah.
I think that's also why I never got a Saturn sooner, was because I was afraid of just ending up with too much clutter in my house. Even now, because when it compared to some of you guys, I actually have a small collection. Like I don't have that many systems really.
Yeah.
You could count all the systems I own in one hand.
Yeah.
Compared to other people. So even with the few systems that I do own, like their space is a premium.
Yeah.
So the one thing that's been holding me back from getting a Saturn for the longest time has just been space. But as soon as I organize things around and stuff, then fair enough. But that's really been like a big factor.
It's not going anywhere, but the prices are going up. So all I would say is be super selective with it. Just be have an eye on what, I know you do that anyway. You've got an eye on what you probably want to play on that system. You've probably got a list in your head already. But stick to that.
But even doing that, you still end up with a lot of games.
Well, you don't need, what I mean? For me, my favorite version of Street Fighter on the Saturn is 02. So I don't need to shell out massive money on 03. I've had it, I bought it, I've had that big box, and I have got it now on a gold disc. But I still prefer 02, and that's still like a 15 quid game.
Yeah.
And that is a physical copy I've got of that as well, because it's a cheap game. That's the other thing as well. I think when you get money tied up in something, because there's always something I'm wanting to spend my money on elsewhere. You know what I mean? And because all this is self-funding, I can't go into kind of funds, you know, for marital funds, should we say? Because then get into those conversations then about how much was that, what are you spending your money on that for, So I only buy stuff like that out of money that's mine, if you know what I mean. It's not going to impact anything else, because then I can just say, it's mine. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. But
can I just say, I've always struggled with the idea of, like, for a game like 0-3, that game is widely available for so many systems and compilations.
Yeah.
That for me, the desire to get it on the Saturn is minute. But you take a game like Hyperduel, you know, like that game, you can't play it anywhere else.
Yeah.
That's why for me it's so desirable.
Yeah.
I need a Saturn to play it. But something like 0-3, only a hardcore collector would desire it for the Saturn, because personally for me, I don't really see the technical nuances that people claim that it's the superior version. For me, if it's playable, it's succeeded.
Yeah.
You know? So for me, that game has no appeal to me, because it's just so widely available in different formats that it's redundant to me.
I suppose you could say that about Metal Slug as well. You know, Metal Slug on the Saturn is a fortune. It's an absolute fortune, but you could get the anthology, or you could play it on any other system for a hell of a lot less.
I wouldn't buy it on the Saturn, to be honest with you. Like, I would focus, if I got my Saturn tomorrow, I would focus on games that are either, like, for example, I would buy X-Men versus Street Fighter on the Saturn, because that game, compared to the one on the PlayStation, are vast. The differences are vast. Even I could see that.
Yeah.
X-Men Children of the Atom, anyone who's played the PlayStation port know that game is straight from hell. It's the worst thing ever. Like even me, who was a bit of a PlayStation apologist when it came to the 2D fighters from Capcom, can acknowledge that X-Men versus Street Fighter on the PlayStation is absolute garbage.
I have to say, I've played it on the Saturn, but I've never played the PlayStation version.
Trust me, you'll be doing this, mate. It's the worst thing ever. Like, even as a kid, when I first got it, it played like absolute dog shit.
Right.
I mean, even the other games were at least playable. Yes, they were missing frames, but they were playable. X-Men Children of the Atom plays like a dog. Don't ever get it. Don't even look at it.
It's interesting that, because especially with the shooters, and this is Craig that's educated me on this over the last few years as well, is that some of the games like, say, Donpachi and Dodonpachi, which are, you know, rated on the Saturn, they actually look and play better on the PlayStation. So there are, like you say, there are some kind of, you know, pros and cons to having both, you know what I mean, and playing those, which I didn't even know you could get that on PlayStation. I thought that was just Saturn only, you know, those conversions. I mean, they're still pretty solid on both systems, but you know, when you get, I don't pick the pixels out of things. I have to be honest with you. If it plays tight and it looks good, I'm in. You know what I mean? I'm not going to start saying, oh, but there's a frame missing there, or this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like playing those games, when you play those games without the 4 meg RAM card, you know, and with, I can't tell you what the difference is, but apparently there's massive differences. But my eyes, I can't see it.
I always thought one of the biggest crimes for the PlayStation is that because Sony was pushing 3D so much, they could have, because I remember on the original PlayStation there was that slot at the back, which could. I think people were saying back then. Yeah. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I seem to recall people saying that theoretically Sony could have had an add-on there for more memory.
Yeah.
So that these games, But the thing was, Sony was not about 2D games back then. You know, so they as far as they were concerned, they didn't really give a rat's ass about the best conversions of these fighters. They wanted 3D. They were pushing 3D. You know, and
they were chasing polygon count, weren't they? Basically, that's what they were doing.
Well, they were going for what was heading towards the future, which was 3D gaming. You know, but I think it was a mistake to just completely ignore 2D games altogether, or just push them to the back. Because what we've come to realize nowadays is that 2D games have aged incredibly well. And of course, since the indie scene has exploded, 2D games all age.
Yeah. I have to say the last few PS4 games I've bought are all 2D.
Yeah. I
You
mean,
know,
look at
as you say, it's coming back.
look at all the expensive PlayStation games that people want now. They're the 2D ones.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. No, you're right. I think it was kind of almost a fad, if you like, chasing that. I suppose it was the new kid on the block, and some great games came out of that. But yeah, maybe we kind of lost some games that would have been nice conversions as well because of that. Because we were going down that 3D path, and that's why I think the Saturn, especially in Japan, kept the faith with that style, and that's why it got that name for having so many great 2D games, and because it didn't really let go. Like, wasn't, although it had its Sega Rally and all that sort of stuff, and it had Virtua Cop and all that stuff. It still kept a little bit of faith and kept a little bit of sort of 2D stuff going on there. Awesome. Well, listen, we've been rambling on now for an hour and 15 minutes, Rob. Can you believe it?
Time flew by.
I do like the tubers to be about an hour. I think, if the people are still there watching this, thanks ever so much for that. They are a bit of an epic watch, aren't they? Then again, people watch it in segments and stuff. But I've just got one question left to ask you before I let you go. And it's been tremendous to have you on. Thanks ever so much for coming on. You're the first of the new breed, the first of the MTT 2.0s. So thanks for that, mate. But who would you like to see on Meet the Tuber? Who would you like to see? It might be somebody that's been on before. It might be somebody that's not been on. Who do you think I need to talk to?
Craig's here again. I want him on camera.
Yeah, I know.
Craig's here again.
I have been thinking about that, and I am determined to get him on, even if it's just like a still, of his woolly hat from behind or something. But yeah, I'd dearly love to get Craig on, and I think I might possibly be able to wear him down and get him on, but we'll see. He's a reluctant tuber, always was. I'm
sure you can blank him out or something, like fuzz his face or something.
We'll suggest that. It'll just be like an image of him, not necessarily video. It'll just be an image of something, and his audio in the background of it, like a pod. He might even I could do sort of a podcast version, I suppose, couldn't I, with Craig? And have him on for that. But yeah, okay, I wrote that down. So that's one vote for Craig. You heard it here first, Craig. Come on, mate, step forward. So cheers for that, Rob. Thanks ever so much. Thanks everybody for watching. Thanks for listening. We're going to catch you in the next one. Cheers. Bye now.
Bye-bye.